The heavy wooden door of the Philadelphia nursing home swings open with a creak that echoes through the sterile hallway. A tall man enters, his once powerful frame now stooped and trembling. His assistant whispers something in his ear as nurses turn their heads, their eyes widening in recognition. Muhammad Ali, the greatest boxer who ever lived, shuffles forward with the hesitant gait of a man battling Parkinson's disease. But it isn't his own deteriorating health that brings him here today. It's the news that his greatest rival, the man whose name will forever be linked with his in the annals of sports history, lies dying in a room at the end of this corridor. "He don't want to see you, Mr. Ali," the head nurse says, stepping forward to block his path. "Mr. Frazier left specific instructions. No visitors, especially not you." Ali's eyes, still sharp despite his failing body, flash with determination. "I didn't fly all the way from Louisville to be turned away at the door. Please, tell Smokin' Joe that I'm here." The nurse shakes her head. "Sir, with all due respect, you don't understand. He said if you showed up, we were to tell you to." She lowers her voice, uncomfortable with the words. "He said to tell you to go to hell." Ali's assistant steps forward. "Look, we understand there's history here, 30 years of it, but this might be the last chance these men have to—" "It's all right," Ali interrupts, his voice a raspy whisper, so different from the booming proclamations that once captivated the world. "Joe earned the right to hate me. I don't blame him, but I still need to try." He reaches into his jacket pocket and pulls out a yellowed envelope. "Just give him this. Tell him if he still doesn't want to see me after reading it, I'll leave and never come back." The nurse hesitates, then takes the envelope. "Wait here." As she walks away, Ali's mind drifts back to Manila, 1975. The suffocating heat, the roar of 14,000 spectators, the taste of blood in his mouth, and Joe Frazier, his left hook like a wrecking ball, refusing to stay down no matter how many punches Ali landed. That night in the Philippines, they had both left pieces of themselves in the ring that they would never get back. The nurse returns 15 minutes later, her expression unreadable. "He'll see you," she says finally, "but just for 5 minutes. And he wants no pictures, no recording, nothing that could end up in the press. Are we clear?" Ali nods, his heart pounding in his chest, harder than it had before any championship fight. As he follows the nurse down the corridor, a young orderly passes by, doing a double take when he recognizes the legend. The orderly reaches for his phone, but Ali's assistant shoots him a warning look, and the young man reluctantly puts it away. The door to room 215 stands slightly ajar. Ali pauses at the threshold, suddenly afraid of what he might find on the other side. The nurse gives him a gentle nudge. "He's waiting," she says. Ali steps into the room alone, and what he sees nearly brings him to his knees. Joe Frazier, once the embodiment of physical power and indomitable will, lies in a hospital bed, his body ravaged by liver cancer. Tubes and wires connect him to machines that beep and hum, monitoring what remains of his life force. But his eyes, those fierce, uncompromising eyes, still burn with the same intensity that had stared across the ring at Ali all those years ago. "Well, well," Frazier says, his voice a harsh whisper. "Muhammad Ali himself. Come to watch old Smokin' Joe burn out, have you?" Ali moves closer to the bed, fighting to control his emotions. "No, Joe. I came to say I'm sorry. I came to ask for your forgiveness before it's too late for both of us." Frazier lets out a bitter laugh that quickly dissolves into a coughing fit. When he recovers, he fixes Ali with a hard stare. "30 years, Muhammad. 30 years you called me ugly, called me a gorilla, and Uncle Tom, made me a laughingstock, turned my own people against me. And now, when I'm lying here with tubes in my arms and cancer eating me alive, now you want forgiveness?" Ali doesn't flinch from the accusation. "You're right, Joe, I was wrong. I went too far, way too far. It was just promotion for the fights, but—" "Promotion?" Frazier spits out the word. "Is that what you tell yourself? My children got bullied in school because of your words. People threw things at me on the street, and for what? So you could sell a few more tickets?" The weight of 3 decades of pain hangs in the air between them, as tangible as the ropes of a boxing ring. Outside the room, nurses whisper and orderlies pass by, unaware that inside, 2 gladiators who once commanded the attention of the entire world are facing their final and most difficult round together. "I brought something," Ali says finally, gesturing to the envelope the nurse had delivered. "Did you look at it?" Frazier's eyes shift to the bedside table where the envelope lies unopened. I was waiting for you to show me yourself. What is it? Some public apology you want to release to make yourself look good one last time at my expense? Ali shakes his head and reaches for the envelope with trembling hands. No cameras, Joe. No press. This isn't for the world. It's just for us. He carefully opens the envelope and removes a photograph, handling it like a precious artifact. He holds it out to Frazier, who hesitates before taking it. In the photo, two young boxers sit side by side on a bench, their gloves off, sharing a quiet moment after a sparring session. Their faces show no animosity, just the mutual respect of athletes who understand the sacrifice their craft demands. It was taken in 1970, before their first fight, before Ali had turned Frazier into a villain in his carefully constructed narrative, before the rivalry had curdled into genuine hatred. I've kept this all these years, Ali says softly, to remind me of how it was before I ruined it. Frazier stares at the photo for a long time, his expression unreadable. The machines continue their rhythmic beeping, counting down the precious seconds of this unexpected reunion. 5 minutes are up, calls the nurse from the doorway. Ali nods and turns to leave, his shoulders slumped in defeat. He's almost at the door when Frazier's voice stops him. Muhammad. Ali turns back. I'm not done with this conversation, Frazier says. And I'm not done with you. Not yet. A small television flickers in the corner of Joe Frazier's hospital room, casting dancing shadows across the walls. On the screen, sports commentators dissect the current state of heavyweight boxing, lamenting how far it has fallen since the golden era of Ali, Frazier, and Foreman. Ain't worth watching anymore, Frazier mutters, his eyes fixed on the ceiling. These boys today, they don't know what it means to fight through pain. Ali, now seated in a chair beside the bed, nods in agreement. Somehow 5 minutes had turned into an hour, and neither man has mentioned the nurse or the time limit. Some unspoken agreement seems to have formed between them. This conversation, 30 years overdue, will not be rushed. Remember Manila? Ali asks, his voice barely audible. 14th round? A ghost of a smile plays across Frazier's face. You were ready to quit. I was, Ali admits. I went back to my corner and told Angelo to cut my gloves off. I thought I was dying, Joe. But then you didn't come out for the 15th and suddenly I was still the champion. Frazier's expression darkens. Wasn't my decision. Eddie stopped it. I was blind in my left eye, but I could have kept going. I wanted to keep going. I know, Ali says quietly. That's why you were always the toughest, Joe. You never knew how to quit. Outside the window, rain begins to fall, pattering against the glass like distant applause. A nurse enters with Frazier's medication, startling slightly when she sees Ali still present. She administers the pills without comment, her eyes darting between the two men, perhaps sensing the weight of history in the room. When she leaves, Frazier shifts in his bed, wincing with pain. Why'd you do it, Muhammad? The name-calling, the guerrilla business. You knew what that would do to me. Ali looks down at his trembling hands. I was trying to get in your head. It was strategy at first, but then... He pauses, searching for words. Then it became something else. I got lost in the character I was playing. The press loved it, the crowds loved it, and I forgot there was a man on the other end of those words. A man with family and feelings. You made me the villain, Frazier says, his voice rising slightly. You who refused to go to Vietnam, who stood up for your beliefs, I respected that. I even helped you when you were stripped of your title, gave you money when you couldn't fight. And how did you repay me? You turned me into everything our people were fighting against. Ali doesn't defend himself. There is no defense. You're right, he says simply. And I've had to live with that. It's one of the biggest regrets of my life, Joe. The rain intensifies outside, drumming against the window with growing urgency. The room falls silent except for the steady beep of the heart monitor and the sound of two old fighters breathing, both labored, both struggling against opponents that can't be defeated with fists. You know, Frazier says finally, my grandson asked me last week if we were ever friends, you and me, if all the hatred was real. What did you tell him? Ali asks. Frazier reaches for the photograph that still lies on the bedside table. I told him the truth, that it's complicated, that sometimes you can respect someone deeply and still want to knock their block off. He studies the image of their younger selves. I told him that you can't hate a man properly unless you understand him. And nobody understood me like you did, Muhammad. Nobody. Ali feels a lump forming in his throat. We brought out the best in each other, Joe, and sometimes the worst. But without you, I wouldn't be the greatest. It was you who made me find another level. Damn right, Frazier says, and for the first time there's a hint of his old fire. I did that. A young doctor enters the room, clipboard in hand. He stops short when he recognizes Ali. Mr. Ali, I'm sorry, but visiting hours are... It's okay, Doc. Frazier interrupts. He's family. The doctor looks between them uncertainly before nodding and approaching the bed to check Frazier's vital signs. As he leans over to examine the IV drip, a small camera falls from his pocket onto the bed. Frazier's eyes narrow. What's that? The doctor flushes deep red. I'm sorry, Mr. Frazier. I just thought, the two of you together after all these years, it's historical. People would want to see this moment. Ali rises from his chair, drawing himself up to his full height. Despite his illness, in this moment a shadow of the old intimidating presence returns. Son, some moments aren't for the world. They're just for the men who lived them. Now please. Understanding. The doctor retrieves his camera and backs away. Of course, I apologize. At the door he pauses. Mr. Frazier, I'll be back in an hour with your next round of medication. When they're alone again, Frazier looks at Ali with newfound respect. You protected our privacy. The old Ali would have posed for the camera. The old Ali was a fool in many ways, Ali replies, settling back into his chair. It took this disease to teach me what really matters. Frazier nods slowly. Funny how that works. You spend your whole life chasing glory, thinking it's everything. Then one day you're lying in a hospital bed and you realize none of it means a damn thing except the people you loved and the ones who loved you back. Ali reaches out hesitantly and places his hand on the edge of Frazier's bed, not quite touching his former rival, but close. I should have been better to you, Joe. You deserved better. Outside, the rain has stopped, and a shaft of late afternoon sunlight breaks through the clouds, illuminating the room with a golden glow. In this light, for just a moment, they are not two old, sick men confronting mortality, but the titans they once were, young, strong, immortal in their prime. We can't change the past, Frazier says finally. Lord knows I've tried. Spent too many nights replaying our fights in my head, imagining different endings. Me too, Ali admits. But you know what, Joe? I wouldn't change a thing about that night in Manila. Not one punch. Frazier looks at him questioningly. Because that night, Ali continues, we showed the world what it means to give everything, to go to places most men never have to go. We may have hated each other then, but we were bound together in something almost sacred. For a long moment, Frazier says nothing. Then, with visible effort, he extends his hand toward Ali. The past is past, Muhammad. We don't have the luxury of holding on to grudges anymore. Ali takes Frazier's hand in his own trembling grasp, and 30 years of animosity begin to dissolve in the simple human contact of two warriors who have finally laid down their arms. You know, Frazier says, a mischievous glint in his eye, I still think I won that first fight in Madison Square Garden. Ali laughs, a genuine laugh that momentarily pushes back the fog of his disease. You did win, Joe. Fair and square. But I got you in the rematch. And Manila was a draw as far as I'm concerned, Frazier counters. They only stopped it because they were afraid we'd kill each other. Maybe they were right, Ali says softly. Maybe Manila took years off both our lives. Frazier's expression turns serious again. Worth it, though. Every minute of it. As the golden light begins to fade from the room, the two men continue talking, their voices low and intimate, sharing memories only they can understand, healing wounds that had festered for decades, and preparing each in his own way for the final bell that awaits them both. The morning sun filters through the blinds of Joe Frazier's hospital room, casting striped shadows across his bed. Ali sits slumped in the chair beside him, having refused to leave through the night despite the nurse's protests. His chin rests on his chest, his breathing deep and regular in sleep. Frazier watches him, studying the face of the man who had been both his nemesis and his mirror for so long. The years have not been kind to either of them. The toll of their profession, the repeated blows, the physical punishment they endured for their art, is evident in every line on their faces, every tremor in their hands. A soft knock at the door rouses Ali from his sleep. He blinks, disoriented for a moment, then straightens in his chair as a nurse enters with breakfast trays. I brought something for you too, Mr. Ali, she says. setting down the trays. You should eat. Ali nods his thanks, but his attention is focused on Frazier, who seems weaker this morning, his breathing more labored. How are you feeling, Joe? He asks when the nurse leaves. Frazier attempts a smile that doesn't quite reach his eyes. Like I went 15 rounds with George Foreman. Ali returns the smile, but concern is etched across his features. He notices a thin sheen of sweat on Frazier's forehead, despite the cool temperature of the room. Should I call the doctor? Frazier shakes his head. No need. This is just how it goes now. Good days and bad days. Today's just not so good. They eat in silence, though Frazier manages only a few spoonfuls of oatmeal before pushing the tray away. Outside the window, Philadelphia is coming to life. Cars honking, people hurrying to work. The ordinary business of living unfolding in a world that seems increasingly distant to both men. Your boy called while you were sleeping, Frazier says suddenly. Your assistant answered your phone. Ali looks surprised. Hannah, is everything okay? Everything's fine. She was just worried about you. Said you'd been acting strange ever since you heard about my condition. Said you've been carrying around that old photograph for weeks, trying to decide whether to come see me. Ali looks down, embarrassed to have his vulnerability exposed. It wasn't an easy decision. I wasn't sure you'd even let me in the door. I almost didn't, Frazier admits. Pride's a powerful thing, Muhammad. Almost as powerful as hate. And I had both in spades when it came to you. He pauses, his breathing becoming more labored. But hatred's a heavy load to carry into the grave. A doctor enters accompanied by 2 nurses. He frowns when he sees Ali. Mr. Ali, I must insist that you step outside while we examine Mr. Frazier. Ali starts to protest, but Frazier nods to him. It's all right, go get yourself some real food, I ain't going anywhere. Reluctantly, Ali leaves the room. In the hospital corridor, he finds his assistant engaged in an intense conversation with a man in an expensive suit. Mr. Ali, the man says, extending his hand. Dave Greenberg from Sports Illustrated. We heard a rumor you were here with Joe. This is an incredible story. The 2 of you reconciling after all these years. We'd like to do an exclusive. Ali's assistant steps between them. Mr. Ali isn't making any statements at this time, and there will be no story. But this is history, Greenberg persists. The public has a right. The public has no rights here. Ali interrupts, his voice firm despite its frailty. This is between me and Joe. Private. Greenberg doesn't back down. We could work with that. A private reconciliation. Very tasteful. We have a photographer who could just get one shot of the 2 of you together. Last image of 2 legends. It would be iconic. Ali shakes his head. No cameras, no interviews, no statements. This isn't a show, Mr. Greenberg. Not everything I do is for public consumption. The reporter looks genuinely confused by this refusal. But your whole career has been about public moments. You're Muhammad Ali. Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. The people's champion. Your rivalry with Joe defined an era. Don't you want the world to see how it ends? For a moment, Ali is tempted. The old instinct to perform, to create a narrative that will resonate with the public, is still there, buried beneath years of illness and reflection. How easy it would be to turn this private reconciliation into one last great Ali moment, one final headline. But then he thinks of Joe, lying in that hospital bed, stripped of his dignity by disease, still proud, still fierce, still smoking Joe until the end. And he knows what he has to do. Some stories aren't for telling, Mr. Greenberg, Ali says quietly. Some moments belong just to the men who live them. The reporter opens his mouth to argue further, but something in Ali's expression stops him. He nods reluctantly and backs away. If you change your mind, I won't, Ali says with finality. When Ali returns to the room an hour later, the medical staff has gone, and Frazier looks exhausted, but alert. A small tape recorder sits on the bedside table. What's that? Ali asks, nodding toward the device. Ask the nurse to bring it, Frazier explains. Been thinking about what you said last night about Manila, about how we pushed each other to places most men never go. He gestures toward the recorder. Thought maybe we should talk about it, for our families if nothing else, so they understand what it was really like. Not the headlines or the hype, the truth. Ali sits down, touched by the gesture. The truth is, I wouldn't have been half the fighter I was without you, Joe. Frazier presses the record button. Let's start there. For the next several hours, they talk into the recorder, their voices growing stronger as they revisit the moments that defined their careers. Not just the 3 epic fights, but the training, the sacrifice, the political and social context of their rivalry. They speak of the pressure Ali faced as a Muslim athlete in a country suspicious of his faith, of the unfair burden placed on Frazier as the establishment's champion during the civil rights era. They discuss the pain, physical and emotional, that they inflicted on each other, and the respect that underlay even their most bitter exchanges. As the afternoon wears on, more hospital staff find excuses to enter the room, word having spread that something remarkable is happening. They try to be unobtrusive, but their awe is palpable. These 2 giants of American sports history, once the most bitter of enemies, now engaged in what amounts to a joint oral history of their storied careers. "You remember that left hook in the 15th round at the Garden?" Frazier asks, a hint of pride in his voice. Ali winces at the memory. "Like it was yesterday, Joe. Nobody had a left hook like yours. Not before, not since. Dropped you like a bad habit," Frazier says with satisfaction. Then more seriously, "But you got up. I hit you with everything I had and you still got up." "Had no choice," Ali replies. "The whole world was watching. Muhammad Ali doesn't stay down." Frazier nods, understanding completely the pride that drove them both. "And in Manila, that right you caught me with in the 13th almost took my head off. But you didn't go down either," Ali reminds him. "Couldn't," Frazier says simply. "Not against you." As evening approaches, Frazier's energy begins to flag. The doctor returns, concerned about his patient's vital signs, and suggests that Ali should leave to allow Frazier to rest. "Few more minutes," Frazier insists. When the doctor reluctantly agrees and leaves them alone again, Frazier turns to Ali with unexpected urgency. "There's something else I need to say, Muhammad. Something important." Ali leans closer. "I'm listening, Joe." Frazier struggles to find the words, emotion clouding his face. "All those years, all that anger, it wasn't just about the insults or the names you called me. It was because I thought you never respected me as a man, as an equal." "Joe, Let me finish," Frazier interrupts. "I need to say this while I still can. I thought you saw me as just a stepping stone, a foil for your greatness. It ate at me, Muhammad. For years it ate at me. But being here with you now, talking like this," he gestures to the recorder, "I finally understand. You respected me more than anyone. You just had a damn strange way of showing it." Ali's eyes fill with tears. "The greatest respect a fighter can show is to give his absolute best. And I never fought harder than I fought against you, Joe. Never had to dig deeper. Never had to be more than I was capable of being." Frazier reaches out and takes Ali's hand, his grip surprisingly strong. "We made each other, didn't we? Neither of us would be who we are without the other." "No," Ali agrees softly. "We wouldn't." Outside the window, dusk is falling over Philadelphia, the city where Joe Frazier made his name, where he opened a gym to train young fighters after his retirement, where he built a life outside the long shadow cast by his rivalry with the man now sitting beside his hospital bed. "You should go," Frazier says finally. "Your family will be worried." Ali hesitates. "I can stay if you want." Frazier shakes his head. "We've said what needed saying. Made our peace." He glances at the tape recorder and left something behind to set the record straight. Ali stands, knowing that this is likely the last time he will see Joe Frazier alive. The knowledge sits heavy in his chest. "Joe, Don't get sentimental on me now, Ali," Frazier warns, but there's no bite in his words. "Just remember me right. That's all I ask. The world will remember you as one of the greatest heavyweights who ever lived," Ali promises. "But I'll remember you as the man who made me better than I ever thought I could be." Frazier nods, satisfied. "That'll do." As Ali turns to leave, Frazier calls after him one last time. "Muhammad, that photo you brought, leave it here, will you? I'd like to keep it." Ali smiles and places the photograph on the bedside table. In it, 2 young boxers sit side by side, their futures still unwritten, their legendary rivalry not yet begun. "It's yours, Joe. It always was." The news of Joe Frazier's death spreads quickly through the boxing world. He passes peacefully in his sleep, 3 days after Ali's visit. The tributes pour in from around the globe. Fighters, trainers, promoters, and fans, all paying homage to one of the sport's true warriors. Ali receives the news at his home in Louisville. He sits in silence for a long time, staring out the window at the Ohio River flowing past, its current strong and steady, Like Frazier's legendary left hook, his family moves quietly around him, respecting his grief, understanding that despite all the bad blood over the years, a piece of Ali has died along with his greatest rival. The funeral is held in Philadelphia, a grand affair befitting a champion. The church is packed with boxing royalty: George Foreman, Larry Holmes, Mike Tyson, and dozens of others who had followed in the footsteps of Ali and Frazier. Ali sits in the front row, his body betraying him with violent tremors that he makes no attempt to hide. During the service, several speakers mentioned the reconciliation, the fact that Ali had visited Frazier in his final days. There are nods of approval, murmurs of satisfaction that the two men had made peace before it was too late. But no one knows the details of what passed between them in that hospital room. No one has heard the tape. After the funeral, as the mourners disperse, a young reporter approaches Ali. "Mr. Ali, there are rumors that you and Joe recorded a conversation during your visit, that you discussed your rivalry. Set the record straight. Sports Illustrated is offering a substantial sum for exclusive rights to that recording." Ali regards the young man with tired eyes. "The tape belongs to Joe's family now. It's their decision what happens to it. But surely the public deserves to hear it," the reporter persists. "This is boxing history, cultural history even." Ali shakes his head. "Some things aren't meant for public consumption, son. Some moments belong to the men who lived them." 2 weeks after the funeral, Marvis Frazier, Joe's son, visits Ali at his home. They sit in Ali's study, surrounded by memorabilia from his illustrious career: photographs, belts, gloves, newspaper clippings that chronicle the journey of a skinny kid from Louisville to becoming the most recognized face on the planet. "Dad listened to the tape every day until the end," Marvis tells him. "Said it gave him peace." Ali nods, unsurprised. "It gave me peace too. Finally saying those things to Joe. Things I should have said decades ago." Marvis reaches into his jacket and pulls out a small package wrapped in brown paper. "He wanted you to have this." Ali unwraps it to find the photograph he had left with Joe, the image of the two of them as young men, before fame and rivalry had complicated everything. But there's something else beneath it. Another photograph, one Ali has never seen before. In this second image, two old men sit beside a hospital bed, their heads bent close together in conversation, their hands clasped between them. The lighting is poor, the angle awkward, clearly taken surreptitiously through a partially open door. But the emotion in the scene is unmistakable. Reconciliation, forgiveness, peace. "Who took this?" Ali asks, his voice barely a whisper. "One of the nurses," Marvis explains. "She knew Dad wouldn't approve, so she never showed it to anyone. Gave it to him the day before he died. He added this note for you." He hands Ali a folded piece of paper. With trembling fingers, Ali unfolds the note and reads Joe Frazier's final message to him. "Muhammad, the world can have our fights. They can have the headlines and the highlight reels. But this moment belongs just to us. Keep it that way. Joe." Ali stares at the photograph for a long time, tears streaming down his face. In all his years in the public eye, with all the iconic images captured of him, standing triumphant over Sonny Liston, lighting the Olympic torch with trembling hands, defying the U.S. government over Vietnam, this might be the most powerful. And yet, it's the one no one will ever see. "What do you want me to do with the tape?" Marvis asks. "Every media outlet in the country is asking for it. They're offering serious money." Ali looks up from the photograph, his decision already made. "Honor your father's wishes, Marvis. The world doesn't need to hear what we said to each other, they just need to know that we made peace." Marvis nods, relief evident on his face. "That's what I was hoping you'd say. Dad always said you understood him better than anyone else, even when you were trying to take his head off. We were two sides of the same coin," Ali reflects. "It just took us too long to realize it." As Marvis prepares to leave, Ali asks one final question. "The photo of us in the hospital? The nurse who took it, did she make any copies?" "No," Marvis assures him. "This is the only one. Dad was clear about that." Ali nods, satisfied. "Good. Let the world remember us as we were in the ring. Young, strong, invincible. But this," he holds up the hospital photograph, "this is who we really were in the end. Just two old fighters who finally laid down their gloves." After Marvis leaves, Ali sits alone in his study, the two photographs side by side before him, the beginning and the end of a journey that defined not just two careers, but an entire era of American sports and culture. He knows that someday, long after he's gone, historians and biographers will continue to dissect his relationship with Joe Frazier, to analyze the trilogy of fights that pushed both men to their absolute limits. They will speculate about what was said during that final meeting, what passed between two giants as they faced the final countdown, but they will never know the whole truth, and that's exactly how it should be, because in a life lived almost entirely in the spotlight, Muhammad Ali had finally learned the value of keeping some things sacred, some moments private, some photographs unpublished. He carefully places both images in an envelope, seals it, and writes across the front, "To be opened only after my death, and never to be published." Then he tucks it away in a drawer, a secret treasure from a life that had few secrets, a private epilogue to the most public of rivalries, a final gift from Smokin' Joe Frazier to the man who had once been his fiercest enemy and, in the end, his most profound friend.